Viewers, welcome back. Welcome back to the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television. And we dive right into conversations with former Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith. Mr. Griffith, good morning, sir.
Hi, good morning. Always a pleasure. You hear me clearly?
We are indeed.
Great.
All right, so we are here to talk a bit about the military-grade radar that has recently been installed in Tobago at A&R Robinson International Airport, in some distance, mere meters away from persons' homes. I want to start off firstly by asking the question that is heavy on a lot of persons' mind. Is it true, from your experience, from your knowledge, sir, that, God forbid, but in a state of conflict, that asset like that is a first target?
So to clarify, the system, the concept with our radar being set up, there's radar and there's radar. The interesting thing is, thankfully, because of ChatGPT, every single citizen of Trinidad and Tobago is an expert in national security now. You go on ChatGPT, and they're all stating all of the things that this radar can and cannot do. So they've all become an expert. So because of that, people are aware of what it is this radar has the capability to do. It is different to the previous radar that we had, where that previous radar had that system of it was ready to monitor anything that may enter the country. This radar has operational capability to act as to complement a defense mechanism for missile launching or to intercept missiles. So there's a different state. What is happening is, because of that, it could very well cause Trinidad and Tobago to become targeted. It is possible, because if it is that the situation with Venezuela and Trinidad and United States escalates, and it is that we have been seen as we now put in a foothold on our launching pad practically for a radar to be set up in Trinidad and Tobago to assist the United States in anything against Venezuela. It may very well cause us to escalate the situation of us being a target, not of the radar itself. Taking out a radar is neither here nor there. Those things you put up in 45, 50 minutes. That same thing could actually be utilized even on the aircraft carrier itself. So I think the main concern that should be there is that, would this increase the possibility of us being targeted by Venezuela? Being honest, the answer is yes. However, my take on it is that this is something that is critical. If you would have seen what was happening recently with Israel and so forth, where Israel actually had a dome. We are in a country where Venezuela have thrown shots across our bow. They have drawn first blood. They have accused Trinidad and Tobago of harboring terrorists. They have stated that we have been holding a launching pad to destabilize Venezuela, that they will invade any country that has such persons, which is basically it was a bold statement that they intended to attack Trinidad and Tobago. With all of these things added to decades of La Guardia Nacional invading our waters, attacking our fishermen and so forth, we have absolutely nothing to protect Trinidad and Tobago if at any time, heaven forbid, Venezuela decides to make the mistake. So for those people who are very anti the United States, understand one thing, that two things can happen here. If the United States and Venezuela acted any type of aggression, we would now definitely be protected, because we have provided that type of support for the United States. If the United States leaves, it is very important that we have some degree of defensive mechanism, which we do not have. A radar like that can assist in starting the process, which is what I asked for years, even as a Minister of National Security, where if missiles are launched from, say, another country into Trinidad and Tobago, we do not have the defensive capability to intercept those missiles. So just for example, Venezuela they have dozens of those, hundreds, of those Patriot type missiles, and they don't need to come and invade Trinidad. They stay from Venezuela and they can press a button, or countries like that. And within 5 minutes, we are talking about every city, our airports, our ports, our energy sector could be destroyed, and it will set Trinidad and Tobago back decades. So we need to have some type of mechanism to intercept such missiles. And if it is a radar like that can be utilized, I am stating that we cannot bury our heads in the sand and keep pretending that this is a zone of peace. It is not a zone of peace. We have seen situations over the last few decades in the Caribbean, from Haiti, when I was actually in the United Nations mission in 1995, Grenada in 1983, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the situation with Venezuela and Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago in 1990. There's been situations. CARICOM needs to stop pretending that we are not part of the world. It's a world crisis where superpowers are being very dominant, and we need to know exactly where our bread is buttered. And if it is that we have seen that what Venezuela have threatened us with, we need to make sure we have that operational capability for a defensive mechanism in case we are ever attacked.
Mr. Griffith, so you've made your position clear on the necessity of the radar for Trinidad and Tobago. I have a question concerning the positioning of the radar. Since you've admitted that the radar is a legitimate military target, should hostilities become ramped up between United States and Venezuela, the radar being very close to civilian populations, does that not place the civilian population in those surrounding areas at risk?
Well, again, we've hardly seen situations with a radar like that. People, the enemy will try to target the radar. What they will do is on most occasions, again, in situations with war, you target facilities that are involved, such as army camps, Coast Guard installations, parts of the energy sector. So it's not let us not believe that this is good. The last thing that I want to do, and I have a responsibility, mind you, that whereas I have seen many people become very, very, I think, irresponsible when they have been instilling fear into the population because of this situation. I cannot do that. My military expertise allows me to understand that what is very important right now is for the country to minimize that perception of fear. And I think because of there's been a very poor communication system by the government, and it has instilled and escalated this fear factor. Because of poor communication, we would have heard a government minister foolishly talk about telling Venezuela we want to nuke them. The situation with the prime minister where she stated that first she intends to, she didn't know about the radar. She said it was a secret. Now she says that she wanted it in the first place. I think the communication system is flawed. And I think if there's a proper communication system in the government, it can minimize this fear. Because Tobagonians may very well be concerned, if this radar is by my doorstep, is it that they're going to target the radar? They're not going to target the radar per se, but as I said, that radar goes hand in hand at times with defensive mechanisms. It's known as SAM, surface-to-air missiles. And those type of missiles can be used immediately. So if at any time anything comes towards Trinidad and Tobago, there are systems such as that radar, you increase the capability, it can be used as a conduit towards targeting missiles that can be targeted towards Trinidad and Tobago. So I think those are the things that the government should be stating, not stating that the persons from the United States are coming just to fix the airport, and then she didn't want to tell Tobago about it because it was a matter of national security. That was unfortunately, she got very bad advice. There's nowhere in the world you can build a radar like that, set it up, and hope that no one will know. You must know. So what was this big thing about trying to keep it a secret? As soon as it was set up, so she's to say that we're keeping it a secret to not to tip off the drug traffickers. Civilians have a mentality, especially political civilians. Everything for them. If Defense Force plays police in a pro league game and you speak to some ministers, they will say, Standard Order 27 is a matter of national security. Total nonsense. There are certain things you're building a radar. When Patrick Manning was setting up the radar, 2 years before it arrived, and the country knew about it. Setting up a radar is not a matter of confidentiality, and you have to put a cloak to prevent the criminal elements from knowing. Everyone would have known. So from day one, it never have been a covert operation so when you hear certain blind fanatics of the government say, well, it was a matter of national security. Well, you don't even know the difference between a water gun and a Glock. So don't come and pretend that you're a security expert. Setting up a radar was never and should never have been something. And by doing that, it allowed citizens to believe you have something to hide. You're not seeing everything. And I think the government brings this forward. It is going to minimize this concern, especially with Tobagonians, that with this radar being here, is it going to affect us and be a greater impact towards lifting the threat level? My take on it is I think it's going to be just the opposite. I wish to assure citizens of this country something like a radar like this is going to greatly enhance security of Trinidad and Tobago, because without that, we are totally defenseless. Remember the last 10 years, the last administration, they shut down the Special Operation Response Team, the cybercrime unit has been virtually shut down, the social media monitoring unit, the rapid response unit, the emergency response patrol, the 12 diamond vessels I acquired, the Chinese vessel, the 4 helicopters, the drone proposals that I did, and we had the tender ready to acquire, the radar upgrading. So we had nothing. Trinidad and Tobago has nothing to protect us if at any time Venezuela decides to, or any country decides to turn on us. A radar like this is going to enhance our defensive capability. This is the type of language that the government should be using to minimize the fear factor that is spreading throughout the country.
Captain Griffith, you stated that the radar works along with system, surface-to-air missile system. In your experience and your expertise as a military man, this radar, the surface-to-air missiles, do they have to be in close proximity to the radar? Can they work remotely from the radar? What I'm really trying to ask you is, do you believe that these missiles are positioned in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, definitely. The radars, and you have to, I honestly do not know exactly the system of this radar. You have to pump information, you have to pump certain things to be able for it to be utilized, first as a mechanism to prevent missiles from, to utilize missiles. And sometimes you don't need a radar, because even like from the aircraft carriers themselves, if they want to have attacks in a country, say in the Southern Caribbean, in South America, heat-seeking missiles can do that without the radar. So this perception that the radar has only been there specifically to assault Venezuela. That could be done from aircraft carriers. The radar itself, that it can also, when you start to pump in things into it, it can act as an assistant mechanism to, as I said, for SAMs, surface-to-air missiles, to intercept missiles that are coming into Trinidad and Tobago. And the missiles do not have to be next to the radar. So it's two totally different things. It just acts to assist in guidance and direction, but it's not to say that these missiles that are going to be used, if we get them, that they must be next door to the radar. It doesn't work that way. So again, there's no fear factor that Tobago should have that that because of this radar and putting missiles now, it is going to enhance and increase the threat level of persons in and around where the radar is presently installed.
So I want to ask you bluntly, outside of the SOFA agreement, what is your opinion on, do you believe that, is it your opinion that the U.S. is using Trinidad and Tobago as a proxy state? And what is your opinion on whether or not unknown backdoor deals, including Trinidad and Tobago, were made in this conflict, in this posture of conflict that we see now? Do you think that we have already been put in it without our knowledge, without the citizens' knowledge?
And sadly, that is the problem. I mean, had I been a minister in government, the main thing that we have to do is to try to unite a country. Anytime a country is into a possible war zone or a possible armed conflict, the last thing you want is internal civil war. And that is what has happened right now in this country. The country is split down the middle. Every single thing that the government says, half of the country who support yellow will agree with every single thing that is said, even though you can see some of these things are blatantly wrong. And then on the other half, every single thing that the government is doing in this, they are 100% incorrect. And I beg to differ. There are many things the government has done in proper manner to assist in securing Trinidad and Tobago. But again, as I said, the communication is what has caused many people to be very, very questionable about how this has worked. When you hear a minister saying that Venezuela will nuke you, I mean, when you hear something like that, unless you're a madman, you're an illiterate, or you don't understand diplomacy and you don't understand national security, shut your mouth. Then you have the situation with the comments that may not have been appropriate at the time to kill them all violently. We have seen what has happened over the last 24 hours, where there have now been, an admiral is now being targeted from the United States. Why did he do the double tap method? After the first shots were fired on a boat, he decided to go again to finish off the individuals under basic laws. Even if in terms of war, you don't do that if the persons are unarmed. But that is going to be dealt with if and when the time comes, whether it is the International Criminal Court or so forth. That is not Trinidad and Tobago's business. That's between the United States and Venezuela. If it is that what they are doing is inappropriate, unethical, or even illegal, they will have to answer to that. If it is that they are doing it based on clear and present danger with enough intelligence to verify that they had to do what was required for the safety and security of citizens of the United States, that is for the U.S. to decide and explain. Trinidad and Tobago, we must be very clear, and I think the Prime Minister started doing that recently when she continued to state emphatically that that the United States will not be, Trinidad and Tobago will not be used as a launching pad to assist the United States in attacking Venezuela. That should have been said from day one. But when the perception by many is just as you said, that Trinidad and Tobago, we virtually sold out, we've given up our sovereignty, and we are just tagging along because we are left with no choice. I honestly do not know. I think, as I said, the problem exists. You have a Minister of Homeland Security. Remember, this man was in charge of 20 persons as a police officer. Now he's in charge of 20,000. He is certainly not proven to give the confidence to know exactly what is happening. That's why he has gone silent over the last few weeks. And because of that, it makes it very difficult. That's why I strongly recommended to the Prime Minister, she needs to have, the same way the United States President has a Joint Chiefs of Staff to advise him, she needs to have a retired Joint Chief of Staff we have so many brigadiers and admirals and major generals who have the qualification and the experience, similar to the same general who was here. Not just the doubles, but they will be able to guide the Prime Minister into what to say, how to say it, and to negotiate in certain things to make sure that it is not perceived by the country that we have now given up our sovereignty, we have sold out. I have not seen, there's no evidence for me to verify that has taken place, but there's enough concern by persons who started the game being anti-government to now re-emphasize and double down that exactly what it is that is being perceived is true. It is true. And I think it is important the government needs to start doing their proper communication campaign to give the assurance to each and every citizen, we stand as an independent state, we are looking after the well-being of Trinidad and Tobago, and what we are doing is for the benefit and the safety and security of every citizen.
And hopefully, sir, because right now, public trust and confidence is at an all-time low, because you don't know what you're going to get today, what answer you're going to get today, compared to what answer you're going to get tomorrow, and even what you got yesterday, right? So public trust and confidence is at an all-time low. Given history, taking history into consideration, and when I say history, I mean history with the U.S. as a sovereign entity, entering into conflicts, entering into countries, regime change. If conflict is to escalate and then the U.S. is to pull out, how, sir, do you see, what position do you see Trinidad and Tobago in? Are we able to defend ourselves against Venezuela? What do you, in your opinion and your knowledge, experience and expertise, given the history of the U.S. military, the U.S. government over years to pull out, where do you think that will leave us?
Well, we have seen it. We have seen it from with weapons of mass destruction and so forth. There have been many situations in years gone by where countries will make a certain claim about something, and maybe it may be used as a justification for something to take place. It becomes a trigger point, stating that Venezuela is they are in support of narco-terrorism and so forth. It could very well be the avenue that is allowing them excuse the legitimacy to do what they intend to do. If that is the case and that happens, as I said, Trinidad and Tobago from day one should have always stated that what the Prime Minister is stating now, we are not picking sides, but again, we need to be very careful, because what you said is correct. If the United States, if this goes okay and the United States pulls out, we are totally defenseless. As the Minister, as National Security Advisor, in fact, I drafted the Ministry of Defense for the then Prime Minister just before the 2010 election, specifically for what I anticipated 15 years later. It was drafted that Ministry of Defense was drafted specifically to prepare us for this. Nothing is being done. The Ministry of Defense don't even have somebody who spent a day in the Defense Force. How could that be? So you have a Ministry of Defense only with civilians, bureaucrats, administrators, public servants, who do not know how to deal with this type of situation. And therein lies the problem. So the Ministry of Defense has not provided the support to the Prime Minister as it should have. And because of that, the things that we would have prepared for since pre-2015 with the 12 Diamond vessels, the Chinese vessel, the helicopters, the aircraft from the Coast Guard, we were getting drones to turn night into day. I was liaising with the United States, we were getting destroyers. I was looking at that same thing about surface-to-air missiles. We have nothing. In the last 10 years, the PNM administration shut down, dismantled, refused to ensure maintenance. We have nothing. The Air Guard, they do not have the capability to even fly, what you call a chicky chong, not even that. They can't fly a kite, far less a helicopter. And the Coast Guard, we have all of these vessels. And instead of the last government maintaining those vessels out of, well, in corruption, what officials do is look to buy major projects, major things to get a little thing at the side. You purchase 2 other vessels that were not required because the Coast Guard already had 8 vessels. And if you man all the Coast Guard personnel, it still can't equate with the naval asset acquisition that we had. But you purchase more vessels. So the Coast Guard is in a total mess. No fault of the Coast Guard, no fault of the Defense Force. It was based on political incompetence. So we do not have that capability, which is why I continue to double down and state that this radar is a step in the right direction.
Mr.
As much as, yes.
You're saying that the radar is a step in the right direction, but we've been hearing about it being a temporary installation.
Yeah,
should the conflict end, the United States is going to then pick up the radar and go with it. So we're back to square one.
And that is the point. And that is the point. If there's a proper Ministry of Defense with qualified experts, listen, I'm talking about people like Admiral Kelshaw, Brigadier Carl Alfonso, John Sandy, Eddie Dillon from the PNM. With these individuals, if they were around the Prime Minister and guiding her, the first thing they would have told her is, listen, PM, we need to know, United States needs to know, it takes 2 hands to clap. You want to have your personnel come here for rest and relaxation or shore leave or to train. We need to have a radar with operational capability to defend us in case you all leave. We need to get some destroyers. We want we want to send our officers to train in West Point. Give and take. There can be no type of dialogue like that, because you have a Ministry of Defense with 100% of civilians who don't have a clue what to do and how to negotiate. I was able to do this when I was minister. I was agreeing to give them access to utilize the radar. In return, they were giving me 2 destroyers at guess what cost? 0. That is how it works, because they were our allies and I was looking to work with them to protect Trinidad and Tobago. So what is required is to have this radar remain, speak to the United States and say, if it is you all want our support, not to attack Venezuela, but you want our support in trading, whatever, we need things to ensure that if and when you leave, we can be properly protected.
All right, thank you, Mr. Griffith. We have to go for a short break, but when we come back, we continue the conversations and we'll talk about the home invasion bill. Stand your gong. So viewers, do us a favor, share the live. When we come back, we continue conversations with Captain Gary Griffith.
To the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television as we continue conversations this morning with a former police commissioner, Gary Griffith. We were previously talking about the controversial U.S. military-grade radar installed right here at the A.N.R. Robinson International Airport, which sparked a lot of concerns and fears in persons. But we will continue such conversations as we continue this week. But right now, as we continue conversations in this moment with Captain Griffith, we talk about the home invasion bill. Captain Griffith?
Yeah, well,
right.
That one is an interesting one. Now, again, to clarify, when again, politicians, when it is that they do not know how to deal with operational policies or whatever to reduce crime, the first thing they turn to is bills and laws. And if you look at this home invasion bill, it is going to enhance it's going to tilt the scales of justice more towards the law-abiding citizens in case of a home invasion than what would have happened previously. But if you look back, like say last year with 600 odd murders, and you look at all of those 600 odd murders, had this bill been implemented, how many less murders would there have been? And the answer is 0, I think. So they're not one life would have been saved if had this bill been enacted 1st of January last year. Because how many people would have said that, listen, that person got killed because they had a firearm and they second guessed and they held back, and because of that they were killed. So the perception that many people who are supporters of the government, this is the big be-all and end-all to reduce crime. Not one death would have been reduced last year, and probably years gone by. Having said that, I welcome the bill because, but it's just to put it into perspective, the perception that this bill is going to be a big impact that you're hearing politicians say, total nonsense. Ask them how many lives would have been saved had this bill been enacted. The answer is 0. But what it has done, however, is, as I said, tilt the scale of justice towards the law-abiding citizens over the criminals. We have situations, you have a firearm, you in your home, and somebody breaks into your home, and unless that person is challenging you and probably has a firearm, you have to now become the suspect in a crime, because the police will say, well, listen, maybe you shouldn't have done that, maybe you should have retreated. It is a bill that is very important, and it gives the persons who have a firearm a fighting chance. Having said that, the bill becomes totally and is of absolutely no value unless two things are done. Firstly, training for the individuals who have a firearm. Because what I fear is that many persons who now have a firearm will believe that they are Rambo or James Bond or Gary Griffith and believe that they are now invincible. That is not what this bill is about. So you will have a firearm, you're upstairs, three guys with automatic weapon, and you say, aha, Kamala, give me the right to stand firm and stand my ground. You're going to be killed, brother. So this is where training comes in. You have a firearm, you need to know that a firearm is used to protect and defend yourself, not as an assault mechanism. You are using it as an assault mechanism to neutralize someone if you believe that that is the best way for you to survive. If you see that 3 and 4 and 5 persons are entering your home and you decide to say, well, Kamala, tell me I have a right to stand my ground, you are going to be killed. And the only way that this can be dealt with properly is for persons who have firearms to be properly trained at the different institutions to understand how to deal with cover from view, cover from fire. I've seen people hide behind a piece of plyboard and they are shooting. The bullet's going to go through you. You have to know the type of equipment that you have that you can protect yourself. You have to know if you have a safe house. You have to know how to be able, as I said, cover from view and cover from fire. Knowing if it is that person is retreating, but he's actually just going his back is now turned, but he's going in another position to try to then assault you, that you now have the right to shoot that person, even though that person's back is turned. If it is that person is jumping over a wall and fleeing, and you shoot him, you are going to be charged for manslaughter. So there's a lot of training that must be done before that could even be implemented and be successful, or else it is going to backfire. The second thing is that the value of the home invasion bill could only happen if it is that we have the same system I did as Commissioner of Police, making it more accessible for law-abiding citizens to have firearms. Under the Hilton Guy, the James Filbert, the Stephen Williams, the Earl of Christopher, the McDonald Jacob, they were all dinosaurs. Their concept is that law-abiding citizens must not get firearms. They gave out 100 a year. There were 40,000 applicants. So had we stayed to their standard, it will take 400 years for these 40,000 persons to even be acknowledged. I put it from up to 1,000 a year, and it did not increase the risk, because there were less incidents of people of that 1,000 than the 100 that were given out before and after me annually, because we put a comprehensive system to make sure the right people got it. But so that is what is required. Here, the present commissioner insists that it must remain in the hands of the commissioner. I beg to differ, because if we continue to have commissioners who are afraid to give citizens firearms, well, then what is the value of the home invasion bill? You can't use a home invasion bill and pelt a pillow at persons with assault rifles. You need to have a firearm. And the present system, that since I left, is back to 100 firearms per year given out to the friends in high places of government officials and friends and family. It must be given to the small farmer, to the businessman, to the homeowner who wants to protect his family and their assets. That can only happen if we transform this present outdated colonial system that a commissioner of police alone must be the deciding factor. The only time it was given, people had a fighting chance to get a firearm, was under my watch. And our government was so corrupt and so incompetent, they lied and misled the country, because you do know, 4 years later, not one police officer or citizen has even been questioned pertaining to their lies as it pertained to firearms, because they didn't want them to get firearms. They alone wanted it for their friends in high places. So firstly, as I said, you must have training to make sure you understand how to use your weapon. And secondly, we need to revamp the process to allow citizens to have a better chance to acquire a firearm.
Mr. Griffith, this bill has raised fears amongst members of the public that this is going to lead to an increase in the number of civilians shooting each other out of, whether it's road rage incidences or you have a conflict with your neighbor and that kind of thing.
Profiling.
They believe that those sorts of incidences will increase, and persons have also stated they are fearful that persons who are abusive in their relationships, in their marriages or whatever it is, may have access to these legal firearms now as well.
Yeah, you're correct. And there's also profiling. Profiling has been a big problem with that stand your ground, like in Florida and so forth, where depending on how the person looks, their color and whatever, you automatically say that I thought that this person was going to affect my life because they were in my yard. And and you shoot at this person, and sometimes there are grounds to these persons. They use this stand your ground as a defensive mechanism based on the fact that they profile someone because of their color and so forth. That is why I again insist that as much as this law is a good law, unless there's proper training, we are going to get that problem. Some people believe I have a firearm now. I see two little boys in my yard stealing mangoes, and I tell them stop, and they're jumping over the wall. I have a right to shoot them. That is not what stand your ground is. Stand your ground is giving you that opportunity now, not to have to be forced to retreat, but to be able to hold firm, to be able to protect yourself. But it cannot be in any way used as an avenue to justify extrajudicial killing. And unless so, we're hearing all the parliamentarians pushing it. I am not hearing where is the process that every single person who has a FUL must go through comprehensive training, which is what I set up when I put the FUL card with a chip in it, demanding that every person who has a FUL, a firearm, they must go on a range once per annum to fire their weapons. We have about 95% of persons who have firearms have not drawn their firearm in years. They have not cleaned their firearm. They have not fired their firearm. So they're going to have ineffective fire. They're going to have stoppages. They're going to have negligent discharges. And with that now, they could be trigger happy. You're sleeping at night. You see somebody pass in the middle of the night. You shoot. It's your son who now came home at night. All of these things can very well happen. It's not to put cold water on this bill. It's a good bill. I agree with the bill. But all that the politicians are talking is the bill to stand your ground. But they're not speaking about training persons to prevent exactly what you're speaking about. If that training is not mandatory, it means you're going to get that. It is going to happen. And when it happens, the government is going to be targeted. So it is hoped that, but again, there's no one in the government with any type of operational or law enforcement training at a senior level. As I said, Roger Alexander was junior middle management, so he doesn't understand these things. And likewise, Will Sturge is an attorney. Nothing against them, but you don't have persons there that will be able to guide the government and say, listen, this bill could only be effective and to prevent what we've seen in Florida. Every single person who has a FUL must be trained to understand it doesn't give you the authority to just shoot a little boy because he came over in your yard to collect his football. It doesn't mean that if people are running away after they stole your mango, you can shoot at them. It doesn't give you the right because this person looks kind of shady, it gives me the right to shoot them. That is not what stand your ground is. And if people misinterpreted that, we are going to get situations. And may I also add, there's also that concern with stand your ground. That I don't know if you're aware. When you fire at someone and you shoot that person rightfully and in a justifiable manner, your weapon is seized by the police for years. It is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And I stopped that as commissioner. It has recommenced. So you are now second guessing, yes, Kamala gave me stand my ground. But if I shoot at this person who's attacking me, I am going to lose my weapon. So I need to hold back because I don't want to lose my weapon. And that can cost them their life. All of these things have to be changed. So unless there's proper training, changing policies, changing the structure for the firearms, and making sure persons are properly trained, you are quite right. There is going to be, unfortunately, situations where persons would have abused their authority, gone over the line of stand your ground, and they can very well be charged for murder.
All right, thank you very much, Captain Gary Griffith, for joining us this morning on the Tobago Updates morning show. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our programming. Viewers, we want to thank you for staying with us, but Tobago Updates, our shows continue, our programming continues. We have GMT up next with Chanel Felix, and she's going to continue those interesting conversations that you so love to be a part of. So do us a favor. Share the live, share the live, share the live. GMT with Chanel Felix is up next.